Thank you very much. I'm just going to get started. What you're going to see here, it's a brief overview of the technology development, maybe a little bit of trends, things like that. It's going to be very brief, of course, 20 minutes. I'll be happy to take questions after that. Maybe you're going to see a little bit of a gloomy picture, but that's somewhat on purpose, and maybe we're going to continue. We're going to end on a more positive tone. But just as a short introduction, so I'm from Aarhus University. We're in the technical science faculty in the electrical and computer engineering department. Specifically, I'm in this section called electrical energy technology. And I also put here a number of projects in which we are involved now. There has been quite a bit of European funding coming towards us recently. The reason why I put this here is that we are involved in a few projects which are about electric transportation. In Helios, as an example, we're building a battery pack which is hybrid, a combination between high energy, high power type of cells. In Rodas, we're looking into electric trucks, mostly on the power electronic side. And iBatman is more on the BMS, cloud, edge computing, these kind of new buzzwords. Point of this being that we're also involved in developing some of these technologies, not only in using them. And there is quite a bit of collaboration at the European level in developing the new technologies. So before I get into some of the specific technologies, mostly focused on batteries, charging, carbon footprint, things like that, I want to make a point about why do we need to decarbonize transportation. And of course, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. I'm sure everybody knows about that. But I would like to make a point in terms of the urgency of this imperative, right? So when I look at the carbon footprint, let's say around this time, which is about 35 billion tons, not including land use, and we're about 8 billion people, then let's say in average we're about 5 tons per person, right? When I look at the carbon footprint in average in Europe, which is, let's say, roughly about 10 tons, then essentially these 35 billion tons accounts for about 3.5 billion people at the consumption that we have in Europe now. Of course, not everybody consumes at the same level, and not to mention that these guys are way off the map. But average, right? You would say that at 10 tons per person, 35 billion tons overall carbon footprint per year. Then that accounts to about 3.5 billion people consumption at the European level. By the way, when we talk about 35 billion tons, that is the annual production. So that comes on top of the last year and the year before. Now we're about 8 billion people, and we kind of grew at 1 billion per every 10 years in the last 20 years. So roughly, let's say that we're going to be about 10 billion by 2050. Okay, when we look at the rate of growth between developing and developed countries, the developing countries are developing much faster. So we could probably assume that we're going to be 10 billion people, and for a large percentage of that are going to have the same consumption level as we had, let's say, 25 years ago. Point of this being that this guy here, probably in 2050, well, I can't go. But it's going to be closer to the ceiling, right? Which also means that this guy here is also going to be, so we are kind of running out of time. And of course, we have to talk about cost and things like that, but fundamentally, we have a big problem, and we're here because of this. So as I said in the title there, we just have to decarbonize everything, including transportation as well, right? So what are some of the challenges? I'm going to talk about batteries, charging technology, environmental footprint, maybe some others, right? In terms of batteries, what we have now, so chemistry is basically an evolving field. We have what we call Gen 3 battery technology at this point, where of course, lithium batteries, but these things are evolving, right? So we're talking about Gen 4, solid state, these kind of things. We're also talking about Gen 5 technologies. So this is evolving, and of course, the technology is getting better. Essentially, we're looking into more performant technologies, more environmentally friendly, more safe, lasting longer, those kind of things. So there is a good and bad story about this, right? The fact that the technology is getting better, where it's a good thing. But then on the other hand, let's say from a recycling standpoint, what we're going to be recycling is the old technology, which we can't do much about it anyway. So until things are settling down, we're not going to be able to make much progress, right, in terms of recycling and those kind of things. Not to mention that always, new technology, well, it takes some time to mature. But nevertheless, things are getting better, let's say in terms of energy density, range, charging time, those kind of things. On the other hand, when we look at the, let's say, effective materials, when we start from the battery cell and then we start adding up things on top, such as the battery pack, battery management system, the power electronics, all these things, then essentially the stuff that we're really interested in the battery is becoming smaller and smaller. So we have to make progress on all the other things related to the battery pack, right? Casing, I don't know, bus bars, all the electronics, those kind of things. So it's not only about the battery technology in itself. Nevertheless, these things are evolving, and I know this is a busy slide, but essentially the point is to see that a lot of these technologies are getting better and better. There is a competition worldwide as to who's going to come up with the best technology. And these things are getting better as well from an emission standpoint, right? So that's why we're looking into better chemistries as well, because they have a better carbon footprint, better utilization, things like that. So in terms of battery demand, I'm not sure how much you have been through some of these points before, but this is to say that things are increasing, of course, the battery demand, and especially from light-duty vehicles, but the trucks are coming as well a little bit. And growing. What worries me a little bit is that we see this growth in China, of course, and when I look at the size of some of these numbers, let's say this one compared to this one, I mean, we're playing catch up. We're not leading the field. We're far from leading the field. Also in terms of material demand, right? It looks like the supply is kind of following the demand, so that keeps prices in check a little bit. And in terms of manufacturing, right, when I look at Europe, there are a lot of manufacturers coming from other places, so European manufacturers are actually not a whole lot. And when I look at the comparison between the manufacturing in Europe and China, I mean, it's just a completely different order of magnitude. I mean, the difference is massive. And also looking at different scenarios, right, towards 2050, 2030, and things like that, China compared to EU, significantly different. So from that standpoint, I'm a little bit worried, right, that we need to accelerate a lot to be able to catch up with the technology. In terms of charging infrastructure, that's growing, of course. I have here, a little bit combination between private and public, and similar picture compared between China, EU, and North America. And we also see the charging distribution. So a lot of places, US in this case, are looking into developing this, large charging infrastructures for trucks. So I mean, these things have to be taken into much bigger perspective to be successful. And also in terms of let's say the power of the chargers and the number of electric vehicles per charging point, then this bottom part here is better. So in other words, in China, there is very little number of electric vehicles per charging station, and the power is actually pretty high. And then this is the rest of the world. So from a charging infrastructure standpoint, we also have to make a lot of progress. And plans in the future, again, there are different scenarios, but things look a little bit better in China compared to the rest of the world. There are some developments for high-power electric trucks chargers, and this is important in terms of charging time. Of course, there are some technical challenges related to this as well. And there is actually a big discussion about, what will be a good charging profile. Should the trucks be charged during the night? Should they be charged during the day as well? Maybe some of the destinations should be closer. Maybe the charging time during the day should be faster. That would enable the integration of renewable energy a little bit better, those kind of things. So a lot of open problems, which from an engineering standpoint we like, but we need to get focused on addressing them. In terms of environmental footprint, just to clarify this topic, and I think you have seen some of these points before, basically a comparison between internal combustion engine, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and battery electric vehicle. Of course, the battery electric vehicle, it's better from an environmental standpoint. And because of this difference here, then the cumulative difference in terms of carbon footprint saved, it's significant over time. So that's important, but also it's important to say that this difference also depends on where you are, depends on how green the grid is. If you burn coal to charge your car, you haven't made a whole lot of progress. And probably Denmark on this slide would look even better, considering the amount of wind energy on the grid. But this is also something to mention, that it's not only about the battery, it's not only about the pack, it's not only about the car. It's a significant shift. In terms of recycling, again, this is getting better, but what I see, it's a little bit on this challenge that the chemistries are changing, and so we're recycling old technology which is not very useful for the new technology. But second life applications are getting better, so the batteries are being used more and more to complete depletion, which is a good thing. And also in terms of environmental footprint, I saw that the International Energy Agency actually put out this nice little tool where you can compare your own carbon footprint for your own car with a conventional car. They have this tool where you can select vehicle characteristics, different driving profiles, how much you're driving, things like that, and then they just give you a comparison of carbon footprint for your electric car compared to an internal combustion engine. So that was a little bit on the battery technology, on the chargers, on the environmental footprint. There are numerous other challenges as well. Of course, the drivetrain, the motors are changing. If you look at the battery pack, well, it's the whole electric drivetrain that has to be changed as well. So the battery pack, in some sense, it's more of a gas tank, if you want, pretty expensive one. So everything else on the drivetrain has to change as well, and reduce cost, reduce size, those kind of things. Research is very important as well, and we can also see that it is a little bit led by China at this time. Trained labor force, there has been a bit of a mentioning before on drivers. If we're shifting the whole energy system towards a more decarbonized energy system, we're going to need a lot of labor force. Takes a little bit to train, go through a bachelor program, masters, and so on. So the more the more engineers we have, the better. And there is a shortage of labor force today. And I've been told about, mentioning a little bit about, myth busting, how new this technology is. And I found these examples back in 1900s. There was an electric taxi, actually, built by this company called Columbia Runabout. The car was called Stock Runabout. Ran 100 miles on a single charge. That's about 160 kilometers, so it's not too bad for 1900s. Kills dog on journey, probably the first mention of a dog ever being killed by an electric car. 14 miles per hour, so that's about 20 kilometers. Okay, probably some of us can bike faster, but and you can see charging stations here, charging stations for trucks. So the technology was actually pretty popular about 100 or so years ago. Of course, it didn't survive because gasoline engines came about, so there was again a decision based on cost. We know the history, right? So, yeah, so that's what I had. Thank you.